Welcome to another episode of Writing on Caffeine, the podcast where you can come along on a journey with a father and daughter as we attempt to write our first novels. I am Jonathan Franzone, and this is my daughter.
I'm Reagan, also Franzone.
What are you drinking this evening, Reagan?
Coffee.
I also am drinking coffee.
Mine has copious amounts of hazelnut creamer in it.
Mine has a little bit of hazelnut creamer, and it's a nice Gavalia K-Cup coffee.
That's what I got too. In a Snoopy cup.
It's not super fancy.
Oh, you should tell them about your cup.
My cup says, it has a picture of Yoda on it, and it says, "The master now I am." It was a gift for my graduation. So back in December, I graduated with my Master of Divinity from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. So how's the writing going, Reagan?
It's going. I did write since the last podcast. I have written, and I've also worked on plot.
That's good.
So I've done things, just not a lot. But I do definitely need to get on it.
I definitely have not written anything.
It's gotta happen this year.
It has to happen, yes. So we had a giveaway up to the end of February. We were giving away 3 books on writing, and we do have a winner. And that winner is Kevin from Pensacola.
Yay, Kevin!
Yay, Kevin. We already reached out, and he should have the books in hand by now. So congratulations.
Congrats, Kevin. Thank you for listening.
So tonight we're going to be talking about suspense and tension and how this affects your writing. So in essence, suspense and tension are powerful tools to ignite readers' emotions, maintain their focus, and create stories that are truly unputdownable page turners. Masters of suspense keep readers in a state of uncertainty until the very end. So basically, it's that feeling that keeps you wanting to turn the page, and you don't want to stop reading even though it's 1 o'clock in the morning
Yeah.
and you need to get some sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So first, we have some of the effects of suspense and tension on writing, and then we have a list of things or methods to create suspense and tension.
Yes.
So the first thing that suspense and tension gives us is emotional investment. So suspense and tension evoke emotions like excitement, anxiety, fear, and curiosity in readers. When done effectively, it emotionally invests readers in the story and characters, making them deeply care about what happens next. This emotional connection keeps readers hooked.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of the time the emotional investment has to do with the characters.
Yes.
Like emotionally invested in the character.
Yes.
Like I want them to overcome this obstacle. I want them to fight back against this person that's been bullying them.
Yes. When I was reading through Twilight, I was deeply invested in Bella and her love for Edward's beautiful face.
Not.
Not really, but.
Oh
All
my
right, the second one.
Suspense and tension sustain interest. So, tension and unresolved questions or conflicts sustain the reader's interest throughout the story. Without suspense, reader engagement can wane, but unresolved mysteries, looming threats, and obstacles keep readers intrigued and turning pages to find out what happens.
Right. So it just keeps it interesting through the whole story,
Yeah,
which is kind of what you want.
right. You don't want a boring book.
Yeah. If someone can put your book down and not go back to it for a couple days, it's probably not good. I do that on those huge books that I read, like Atlas Shrugged. It took me a year and a half to read. Now I'm reading Brothers Karamazov, which is actually a lot better, I think, than Atlas Shrugged, but like it's not really like a thriller. It's not holding me, so I can put it down for several days and not really mind.
Right.
So next, it creates anticipation. Suspenseful storytelling builds anticipation by hinting at potential future events or consequences. This anticipation compels readers to continue reading to have their expectations confirmed or defied in delightfully surprising ways.
I feel like parts of this can be things like foreshadowing
Exactly.
or red herrings,
Right. Yeah.
which I mean, most people I feel like who read a lot kind of catch on to those
Yes.
and they can kind of, at least for me, I kind of like have a list running in my head of like promises that the author has made
Oh, yeah.
while while I'm reading, and I'm like, this has to be resolved by the end of the book. This has to be resolved by the end of the book, and I really want to see how they do that.
Yeah. A lot of times I don't keep an actual mental list, but if something doesn't get fulfilled by the end, it leaves you feeling hollow.
Yeah,
I've read that before. I can't remember where, but one of the things I actually liked about Twilight was
that it was resolved.
yeah, she actually resolves everything very well
Yeah.
in the end of that first book.
The last Divergent book resolves nothing. Absolutely nothing.
That's a terrible example, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just nothing like the issues that are set up in the very first book
Right?
still aren't resolved by the end of the third book.
That's unfortunate.
It is really unfortunate. The literal government has just collapsed.
Okay.
No, nothing.
Is there another series coming or something?
No.
No?
No.
She's just done.
Yep.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe she got tired of
I sure did.
it.
All right. It increases stakes. Building tension often involves raising the stakes for the characters by introducing heightened conflicts, dilemmas, or ticking clocks. Higher stakes amplify the suspense and make readers anxious to discover if their characters can overcome the obstacles.
Yeah. No comment. Number 5, it enhances pacing. So, effective use of suspense and tension enhances the pacing of a story. It allows for faster paced, action packed sequences intermixed with slower sections that ramp up the tension before another explosive event.
Hmm.
So, I think we'll talk about that later in the techniques or the methods. But a nice way to build suspense and tension is to have periods of high action followed by not as much action or relief or a rest period. And Brandon Sanderson actually talks about this in his class on writing, which he's recorded a couple times.
Yeah.
So you want this up and down effect, which gives your readers a breather, so it's not just all high paced, but then it makes the next high paced event that much better.
Right. Yeah. Totally. It fosters active reading. When suspense is well crafted, it fosters active reading as audiences analyze clues, make predictions, and theorize about what will happen. This mental engagement deepens their immersion in the story. So I told you earlier that I was gonna mention something to you.
Okay,
Um, Sometimes when I'm like super engaged in a book, my heart is like beating really fast. Usually it's in like the action of a story or something. And I get so panicked, I have to cover the words because my eyes will skip down. I
really?
have to like hold my hands in front because my eyes will just jump down to the bottom of the page.
Because you want to skip ahead to make sure it's going to be all right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. That's hyperactive reading.
Yeah.
And also, like you mentioned before, keeping the running tally in your head of promises made. That's sort of an active reading
Yeah.
activity there too.
When we were at the beach house and you were making fun of me for panicking while I was reading.
Yeah, you are physically shaking your head and reacting to the book you were reading. It was very interesting and fun to watch. So, next, we'd like to go over 10 methods on how to build suspense and tension. So, the first one is the ticking clock. So, nothing makes it more tense and suspenseful than a ticking clock that you
Hmm.
have to beat. So introduce a time constraint or deadline that adds urgency and raises the stakes. This could be something like a bomb about to detonate, a terminal illness with limited time left, or an encroaching army about to attack. So an example that I have of this is Mistborn, The Lost Metal. So this is the very last book in the Wax and Wayne series. This is not a spoiler.
Good.
So it's the premise of the book. So Wax, he is a big senator in the main city, and he discovers that there is this element. the lost metal, which is highly, highly explosive, like nuclear detonation level explosive.
Cute.
And he discovers that the set probably has this substance.
Hmm.
And they've been smuggling things into and out of the main city. And so they figure that they're trying to build a bomb of some sort because they're trying to create chaos in the world so that this other god, I think her name's Kel or Tel something, this other god of chaos will come in and take over the world. And and so the ticking bomb is they have to figure out what's going on and stop it before
Yeah.
they are able to build this bomb and launch it against the main city, which is escaping my what's the name of the
Um,
city?
it's like Ellendale or something.
Yes. Yes. So yeah, that's basically going to be wiped off the map if they don't stop it.
Hmm.
So it's very effective because it starts in the very beginning of the book and through the entire book. Like it's ever present that this bomb could go off at any minute.
Yeah.
So
All right.
that's really good.
That does sound good. Number 2 is high stakes. Increase what's at risk or what could be lost for the characters. This makes readers invest more in the outcome. Potential losses could involve loved ones, freedom, survival, etc. And an example of this is The Lord of the Rings, which, if I'm going to expound on this myself without having your brain, um, I mean, the high stakes are that Eyeball Man, what's his name? Sauron.
I had a mouthful of coffee. Thank you for that. Eyeball man. Lord Sauron.
Yes, is trying to destroy the world.
Yes, it's
And
basically the survival of the human race.
mhm,
Not
of
so much,
all races, right?
well, not so much the elves because they're leaving and the dwarves are kind of diminishing.
What about the hobbits?
So, and the hobbits are
The
diminishing.
Oh, okay.
So, all in the background of this is the overarching story that
Humans are taking over.
it's become the age of men. And
Gotcha.
so it is the survival of the world, but mainly of humans.
Of escaping Eyeball Man.
Eyeball
I'm
man.
so sorry. I do know The Lord of the Rings. I have read it.
Not just watch the movies. Yeah, those are good audiobooks. That guy that
That with the
narrated it.
soundtrack in the back.
Yeah, he puts soundtrack and sound effects in it. It's really, really done well.
That's how they should do movies for your mind.
Yeah, not as overbearing
And loud.
and loud. Yes. All right, foreshadowing. So drop subtle hints or clues about potential future events or dangers to come. This plants seeds of anticipation and dread in the reader's mind about what may unfold. And so I'm going to just milk this one for all it's worth. So Twilight.
I mean, you might as well.
I might as well. I had to read the thing. So the very opening words of the book, I've got them here. I'll just read them. I'd never given much thought to how I would die, though I'd had reason enough in the last few months. But even if I had, I would not have imagined it like this. I stared without breathing across the long room into the dark eyes of the hunter, and he looked pleasantly back at me. Surely it was a good way to die, in the place of someone else, someone I loved. Noble, even. That ought to count for something.
Oh, Bella.
So this is the foreshadowing, obviously, about her dying or facing death at least.
Right.
So the very opening words of the book just lay this groundwork.
You know what else does this trope?
What is that?
Tangled. At the
Yes.
very beginning, Flynn Rider says,
This is
"This
the
is a story
story
of
of
how
how
I
I
die."
die. Yeah.
Another really good example of any type of foreshadowing is Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah.
And most of the time, his foreshadowing is so subtle you don't even catch it until you like read it the second time.
Right. Yeah.
However, I did actually catch something while I was listening this past week. And I'm reading currently The Rhythm of War, which is the second in the Stormlight Archive.
The
And
words of radiance.
yes, I'm sorry. It's The Words of Radiance. That's
Yes.
what I'm reading, not The Rhythm of War. Words of Radiance. And Kaladin, right? Not
Kaladin.
Kelsier. I always want to call him Kelsier. Kaladin is trying to protect the king, or not the king, High Prince Dalinar, right?
Right.
But they're worried about the king. They're like discussing things during the high storm.
Yeah.
And he mentions, like in a little blurb, how the king is whining in the background about how they should be more worried about the things he sees over his shoulder in the mirror,
Yeah.
which is what Shalon experiences in the first book when
Right.
she sees pattern
Yeah.
over her shoulder.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, I see you.
I see what you're doing.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yep. Yeah, he's very subtle about it.
Yeah, like he makes it seem like it's doesn't matter,
Right.
even though like literally every word he says matters,
Yeah.
which is how we should aim to write. With like every piece of information, every tidbit we drop should matter. It shouldn't be just pointless.
Right. Yeah.
But he just does it so well.
He does it very well. I guess that it helps when you write like a billion words a day.
When you have something wrong with your brain that makes you do that.
Right.
4. Unresolved mysteries. Leave key questions unanswered by withholding critical information from readers. Their curiosity to uncover the truth will propel them forward. For example, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows.
Yeah, so I've Hallows versus Horcruxes, also Horcruxes, also Harry is a Horcrux.
Actually, I had this thought the other day, which let me just. In the Chamber of Secrets,
Right?
Harry is bitten by a basilisk.
Correct.
So why didn't the Horcrux inside him die?
Because he didn't die.
Oh, so he had to die.
He had to die.
Okay. So it couldn't just be like, he almost died.
The objects, like, they didn't have life, so they just had to be destroyed in some fashion.
Okay. So this is wild to me because in the chamber, right, Tom Riddle, Voldemort,
Right?
is trying to kill Harry.
Yes.
So I guess Horcrux Voldemort doesn't realize that if he kills Harry, because he doesn't realize he's a Horcrux.
He doesn't realize he's a Horcrux. He's just a piece of Voldemort that's stored in the diary.
I don't think Voldemort realized that Harry was a Horcrux
No, he doesn't.
until never.
Which is
Or
no,
until,
until the very end
yeah.
when he comes back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Otherwise, he wouldn't have killed him
Yeah.
or
Little
tried to
dummy.
kill him.
Little dummy.
Yeah. So the unresolved mysteries there are, they have this whole dilemma of, the Deathly Hallows mystery, and if we had these three objects, then we're undefeatable. But then there's also the Horcruxes, which is what Dumbledore told us to do.
Right.
Which path are we going to take?
Right.
And then there's the whole mystery of the Horcruxes. What
Like,
are
what are
they?
they?
Where are they? How do we destroy them?
And thank goodness Voldemort's so dramatic, or else they wouldn't have been able to find the Horcruxes in the first place.
Right.
Man, if I was Voldemort, I would have made my Horcrux like a piece of sand and just dropped it in the ocean and be like, I'm living forever, buddy.
Good luck finding that.
Like a rock and just like chuck it somewhere.
Yeah. Well, the sand would have found a way to get into a whale and then told the whale to go somewhere. So
Something like
it
that.
would have been found eventually. So, number 5, ominous atmosphere. So, use vivid descriptive language to create a foreboding, ominous, or unsettling atmosphere that signals potential threats lurking. So, a couple examples I have are Mistborn. In the very beginning of Mistborn, it's just this environment where, the mist comes every night and it's scary.
Hmm.
And it's very ominous because the Lord Ruler is ruling over everything. It's just very gloomy
Yeah.
in the beginning.
And the people think that they'll die if they go out into the mist.
Yeah. There's like the mist wraiths or whatever.
Hmm. Um, Another thing that this kind of reminds me of is in video games, which you can kind of occasionally consider video games a story.
Yeah.
Um, like you'll walk somewhere
Right.
and then like the fight music starts playing
Oh,
and
yeah.
everything's fine. And so you're like, oh no,
You know something's up.
I'm scared. Like back up, back up, back up.
Right. And I'm sure you've seen those examples of like someone will take a scary movie scene and then just put different music with it
Yeah.
that's like lighthearted and funny. It completely changes the tone
Oh yeah.
of what you're watching. So it's similar to that, only in writing. So Lord of the Rings is that way. Eyeball Man is, threatening to kill everything.
Right.
You've got orcs and these evil things running around everywhere trying to kill them.
Hmm.
That's very ominous. And then Hunger Games.
Yeah.
It's a very gloomy dystopian world.
Right.
You could probably throw anything in the dystopian genre under this category. Like that's one of the key features of that genre is the world's over,
Right.
basically. So what do we do now?
And who's going to save the world? A teenager.
Ong.
Oh, no. You're off the podcast. That is an unforgivable sin, sir. Number 6, unreliable narrators. Employ an unreliable narrator whose version of events or perceptions cannot fully be trusted, leaving the truth ambiguous. I've talked about a million times on how unreliable of a narrator Katniss is.
Yeah.
She literally all the time has no idea what's happening. I actually saw this like Instagram reel the other day, and it was this girl, and she was doing like a skit of what she thought it would be like for like the leaders of the rebellion, like having a conversation after they've like tried to give Katniss the hint that they're
Right.
rebelling.
Yeah.
And somebody's like, "No, I showed her my watch with the Mockingjay on it. She has to know." And then the other guy's like, "You know, she's really oblivious. Like, she probably doesn't know at all." Because she really doesn't.
Yeah.
Like, she's the whole time I'm reading the books, I'm tabbing it with my tab that I've labeled Katniss versus Katniss
Right.
because she's just so oblivious to everything.
She's her own worst enemy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And then another example, the only other example that I came up with was The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very scary short story, but the narrator in this story is basically trying to convince you that he's sane, but
Yeah.
he's not
Right.
because there's a heart thumping under the floorboards. And
Right. Does that make sense?
yeah, kind of scary.
Mhm.
So cliffhangers in chapters or sections at the moment of highest tension before revealing what happens next. This forces readers to continue to resolve the suspense.
Yep.
So Hunger Games, I think, does this.
Mhm.
I can't really speak to that. I've not actually read the book, but The Lord of the Rings does this in one spot that's really well done. So there's this one scene where Frodo and Sam have to go through this dark place into the land of Mordor, and it's the lair of Shelob,
Mm.
this giant spider, and the spider ends up stinging Frodo, and as you're reading it, you get the impression that Frodo is dead.
Right.
He's gone. And Sam thinks he's dead. And so Sam takes the ring from him and he's bawling his eyes out and goes on to continue the quest. Well, he's not dead.
Right.
So it's a very effective tool in that to not only grip your heartstrings, because by this point in the story, you're really attached to Frodo and you want to see him succeed. But then when it turns out that he's not dead, then that just adds a whole different layer of adventure.
Right.
Pam has to go rescue him out of the guard tower.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool.
In the Hunger Games, so the first book ending is not a huge cliffhanger. It's kind of ends with Katniss and Peeta like arriving back in District 12
Right.
and just like a what's gonna happen next.
Yeah.
But the second book into the third book is a huge cliffhanger where I mean, I guess kind of spoiler alert, but if you haven't read Hunger Games yet, sorry. Katniss is pulled out of the arena and finds out that District 13 is functional and
Right.
they're going there. And she also finds out that PETA has been left behind
Yeah.
to the Capitol.
Oops.
And even more so in the movies, which I really love that they did this, that the last book is divided into two movies. And at the end of the first movie is the scene where PETA is rescued from the Capitol
Hmm.
and he immediately tries to kill Katniss. And that's the end of the first half of the second movie or the
Oh,
last
yeah.
movie.
Yeah, I remember that.
And you're
That's
just
good.
like, what just happened? Like, I was so glad that by the time I was watching those movies that they were all out.
Right. So you didn't have to wait 2 years to
Yes,
see
to
the
like
next
an
one.
entire year to see the next one. Like, oh my goodness. Wild.
Yeah, that would have been bad.
But yeah, I feel like they did suspense and cliffhanger
Yeah.
well.
I think they tried to do that in the movies to the Lord of the Rings when they came out to the movies.
Hmm.
Because I think at the end of the first movie, like you just kind of see Sam and Frodo like walking over this cliff into Mordor, like they're off on their own, and it kind of just leaves it at like at
Yeah.
that. I remember there being audible cries from the audience when we saw that in the theater. They're like, "No!"
The Eagles like come
I'm
and
just
get them.
laughing because I've read them all
Right.
multiple times. I know what's happening, so
Exactly.
but yeah,
All right. Am I on 8?
I think you are.
Contrast with moments of calm.
Ah,
Build periods of calm and normality before explosive events to increase the surprising, jarring impact and sense of looming dread. And examples are Ender's Game and Hunger Games,
yeah,
which I feel like, again, in Hunger Games, I feel like this is done well because there's this point in the first Hunger Games where Katniss and Beta are like in this cave
yeah,
and they're just in there for like 4 or 5 days, just hiding and spending time together. And Katniss is trying to like win the Capitol over by pretending that she loves Peta, but Peta's dying. But it's like kind of this serene moment where they're just kind of together and they kind of feel sheltered like from the Capitol in there.
right.
And then, when they finally have to come out of that cave, it's the end. Like that's when those big mutts come and chase them and
The Death
the
Hounds.
Death Hounds. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of, at least good books, like a lot of books do this really well.
Mhm.
Just kind of the up and down.
I feel like it's important for character development.
It is, yeah, because you want to see them in different, reacting to different situations,
Mhm.
and it kind of really develops their character.
Right.
So Ender's Game does this really well because partially it's because you get the idea that he's in battle school. It's all battle school.
Right.
And so there's these periods of battle, and then there's off periods where he's like doing this computer game that's meant to like explore who he is and all these types of things. And there's character development between him and his best friend. And his name's Bean because he's small. And but yeah, it just goes back and forth between these high, intense battles that he has to organize with other teams, and then just doing school
Right.
type things. But yeah,
But he's actually fighting a war.
in the end, yes, spoiler alert, he actually is in the war. And he wins.
Yay, Ender.
Yay, Ender. So number 9, escalating obstacles. Continually introduce greater impediments or raise the difficulty level for characters to overcome complications, amplifying the tension. So I think with this, there are just so many examples.
Yeah.
Basically, any good story, all of the ones that we've mentioned, um,
Yeah.
Twilight, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Atlas Shrugged was really good at this. Actually,
Okay.
it was a super long book, and so it does this over the entire book. In the beginning, it's just like they're trying to do business with capitalistic mindsets while the socialists are working behind the scenes trying to undermine
Hmm.
what they're doing. And it's a real slow burn, but it just keeps ramping up, ramping up until the government basically owns everything. Not only that, but now they're like physically attacking people, and
Right.
to the end where it's just like the world is ending, this big city is blowing up, and
Yeah.
everything's on the table. So
Hmm. All right. 10. Character dilemmas. Place characters in impossible situations where they face agonizing moral choices with significant consequences, no matter what they decide. So the example in this one is The Hobbit, where he has to decide whether to kill Gollum or not.
yeah, so that's in the cave. They go under the mountain,
Hmm.
and they get captured by these mountain trolls, and Bilbo gets separated. And
Right.
this is when he discovers the ring. He has
Hmm.
to solve. He plays the game of riddles with Gollum, and he has the ring in his pocket, and that's the riddle. What's in my pocket? That's the thing that wins the game. But then he has to run for his life. But Gollum is in between him and exit, and like he pulls out Sting, his sword, and he's invisible because he's wearing the ring, and he could just chop Gollum's head off, like
Yeah.
no problem. But he decides in that instant not to, and
Right.
instead just jumps over him and runs out.
Hmm.
So it's a moral dilemma. Like, am I really that guy that just out of the shadows kill somebody,
Right.
even though they're a terrible person.
Right. I like how they do that in the movie too, like showing Gollum like kind of breaking down.
Yeah, he kind of has his face almost turns innocent, like he's just helpless,
Yeah.
which he kind of is.
Yeah.
Like because he had the ring, and the ring is the evil thing that is driving him to that end.
Right. Taking the Arkenstone.
Yeah, the Arkenstone thing is a really great one because this is the stone that Thorin Oakenshield, like it's his birthright. Not only that, but he really wants it so much that like he's losing his mind. He's got the gold fever. And so Bilbo could just give it to him and like he would be, Thorin's right hand man. He would probably love him to the end of the earth. But he knows it's bad for Thorin.
Right.
And so not only does he keep it, but eventually he gives it to the guys that are outside,
Yeah.
like trying to get in and get their share. The humans from can't remember Dale.
Mhm.
And so he hands it over to them as a bargaining chip,
Right.
which
And
is
then
terrible.
another part of that is that not only is Bilbo hiding the fact that he has the Arkenstone, but Thorin only trusts Bilbo.
Yes.
And so Bilbo's like, "Oh no." Like how terrible does that feel when like you
Right.
know you've done something against someone, but they like think that you're the only person in the world that they can trust.
Right.
It's like, "Oh no, this feels terrible."
Yeah, but very much he did the right thing in the end. And, spoiler alert, Thorin does die, but before he dies, he realizes the good that Bilbo did in keeping that from him.
Ah,
And so,
that is so sad. I remember
yes,
you reading me The Hobbit for the first time and being so dramatically upset that Thorin died.
I was choking back tears trying to read that section to you guys.
I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
It was rough. And I'm going to tell you, every time I read that section, it's hard.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it is. So, in closing, we'll cover the books that we've read or are reading since the last time. So, I mentioned this one before. So, I am reading Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I'm probably going to get crucified by people on the internet for saying it like that.
Meh.
I don't know how to pronounce it, but that's the best I could do. Brothers Karamazov is often touted by people as being the best novel ever written
What?
or the best Christian novel ever written.
Okay.
I'll have to let you know my thoughts on that
Right.
afterwards. It's another big one. I started The Druid by Jeff Wheeler. He's a good author we both like. I'm about 35% through that one, and so far it's good. It's not Brandon Sanderson. It's not very
Maybe
complex.
that's why I read it and I don't remember any of it
Yeah.
because it was like it was good, but it wasn't like awesome. You
Yeah.
know?
It's very straightforward. You can kind of see what's going to happen.
Right.
There's some foreshadowing in it.
Ooh.
Ooh. And also, I started listening to Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. I'm a decent way through that, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It is just comical. It is funny. I'm really enjoying it.
Good.
Yeah,
I have to. You'll have to let me know how it is when you finish it, and I'll maybe pick it up.
yeah,
I've got a lot on my list right now.
yeah. And because of who the main characters are, so it's an angel and a demon,
Hmm.
and they're trying to prevent the end of the world.
Right.
So there's a lot of biblical imagery in there, and they make light of a lot of things about the Bible and just kind of the way of the cosmos with a God and
Right.
Satan and all those things. It's not overly sacrilegious or anything like that. It's not making me cringe. It just truly makes me laugh
Yeah.
because this is what a couple of authors think about Christianity
Right.
and that sort of thing.
All right. Well, I am currently reading The Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. About 14 hours into that. This book called Divine Rivals. I think I talked about this last time.
I
It's
think
like
so.
fantasy. You've got mail.
Oh yeah,
Um, Maze Runner by James Dashner.
you're still reading that?
Yeah, I think I've got. It's this. This says I've got 3 hours left. I'm about like 50, 60% through.
Yeah.
Um, Not really reading any of those. Trust of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. The Hobbit, technically. And then the fifth Zodiac Academy book, which I don't recommend. Don't read it. It's not good.
Yeah, you talked about that last time. You're kind of hooked on them, but they're really bad.
Yeah, just don't read them.
Thank you for joining us in this episode of Writing on Caffeine. We hope you'll join us again in 2 weeks. Please subscribe wherever you find podcasts. If you are so inclined, leave us a review. 5-star reviews are preferable. Be sure to visit the website, writingoncaffeine.com, where you can view the show notes and subscribe to our email list so that you never miss an episode.
Bye! Without suspense, readers' engagement can't win. What? Welcome back to the podcast called Reagan Can't Read.